What's up, everyone? So I'm here with JeSani Morris. I call her Jean Grey, though, and we will unravel why in a moment. But essentially, we're here to talk about, as usual, unlocking your inner self, and I've called this one Unleashing the Inner Phoenix for a reason. In me and David's video, the XNFJ compare and contrast video, I talk about how in the movie Apocalypse, X-Men Apocalypse, we have Professor Xavier, who I believe is ENFJ, and then Jean Grey, who I believe is INFJ, and they have a very intense sort of NI type of relationship. And for those of you who don't know what NI is, it's the main perceiving function of all NJs. So ENFJ, INFJ, ENTJ, INTJ. It's the dominant function for INFJs and INTJs, and the second/auxiliary function for ENFJs and ENTJs. And Jean Grey here, JeSani, is actually an INFJ. So I wanted to take some time to pretty much unravel some of the problems that INFJs may have. JeSani is working on vulnerability and all of that. Thank God for the editing thing. Because if you say something you don't want to say, then we can just cut that out.
Absolutely.
But yes, we're here to just give a lot of tips, and it won't just be for INFJs. In fact, I relate to a lot of the things that we have already discussed as an ENFJ, and I think that a lot of people in general will be able to relate because we all have an inner phoenix inside us. And it may look different according to what type you are, according to what Enneagram you are, whatever. But hopefully, as we unpack more of JeSani's and even some of my vulnerable points, then it'll be able to help you with your guidance.
Okay, so I am 20. I am currently a sophomore, but since the semester's over, I'm basically a junior. I'm a biblical studies student.
Hey.
I want to be a college professor, and so that's kind of the arena that I want to go into. I love old school gospel music. That's probably like number one. I am a PK. I have 2 younger siblings, and we're super, super close. And I'm left-handed.
Oh, yeah. That's a fun fact. That's important.
Yeah,
a left-handed INFJ female.
Stuff. And I'm black.
Black.
Moving
and
on.
Christian.
Absolutely.
And, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. But that's good. And you even mentioned your siblings, too, which we believe to be ENFJ male, younger brother. Sub to you, J-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And then also ISFP sister.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you have an ENFJ dad and ESTP father. So a lot of beta quadra stuff going on. ESTP mother.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, how that work?
Thank you.
So I love Pinterest. That's like the most I do. And with my free time, it's really bad. We're gonna work on that. But anyway, so I was scrolling through my Pinterest feed, and I have a lot of random different boards. And INFJ personality types is one of my boards, and so they recommended this pin, I guess is what the correct term is. And I saw 12 signs of an unhealthy INFJ. Now I realized that just because it's on the app or on the internet doesn't mean that it's correct. So I read through it. I was like, wow, this seems pretty accurate, at least for me, things that I've struggled with. So what I always do, send it to Denzel, because I'm still new at all of this. And so, for all I know, it could be completely wrong. So I sent it to him, and he was like, yo, this is actually pretty accurate. I'm going to send it to David. They kind of do a little back and forth. I read through it, and I was like, wow. So... And then I asked Denzel, okay, so I struggle with all of these things. So what makes you think that, I'm a healthy INFJ? And that's kind of how that whole discussion started.
For those of you who may have not seen, I made a video pretty much called Undeveloped, I can't even remember the stages, but pretty much unhealthy, healthy, developed, and delusional, I believe, are the 4 stages in that video. And if you want, you can go check it out right now. There should be a little blurb popping up over there. It was a spontaneous speaking video, so there was no edits. So just bear with me as I travel along these things as you watch. To be developed is different from being healthy. So like I said, there's the unhealthy stage, then there's the healthy stage, which is pretty much like average, like how most people in the world are like operating. And then there's the developed stage, which is like, whoa, I not only realized my powers, but now I've tapped into them and I know how to use them to like their highest potential. And then there's the delusional stage, which is usually like when people think that there's something they're not, like INFPs who swear that they're INFJs, and it's like, no, you're not. And like just a whole bunch of like other things like mistypes and people who think they're a lot more healthy than they really are, which is clearly not JeSani either. I actually still have the text message, which I'll go ahead and recite right now. I made sure to screenshot it in advance. And I said, so essentially, you'll know you're developed when you no longer see yourself in a fashion where you are the victim and nobody gets you and etc. But rather you are in charge and in control, and even if people don't understand you enough, people do, and even if people don't understand you, enough people do, and you know how to communicate your insights, FE usage, well enough to not feel that way anymore. You are now too powerful to be a victim, which is how I now view myself. I'm far too powerful of an ENFJ to pity myself as an intuitive and complain about how I'm misunderstood. I'm making moves to change that, and that's what I think developed intuitives do, such as you were when you would share your insights on Snapchat and all, which is part of what made me see you as developed, because you seem to have a great grasp of sharing your insights, such as I would do on YouTube, whilst I've learned to spend enough time with my insights like you do to actually have the substance before I go sharing it. So that was just a lot of information, but but essentially, like, just to break those things down real quick, what I was saying is that a lot of intuitives, and especially INFJs, and especially when INFJs first realize that they're INFJs, they tend to go into this woe is me type of mindset where it's like, oh, I'm so intricate. Nobody understands me.
Dramatic.
And then, friends will come around and they're trying to, befriend the INFJ or the INFP or the ENFJ, whatever intuitive it may be. And it's like, no, you just go on without me. I don't even bother to explain myself to you because you'd never understand. I am the black sheep. Stuff like that.
Dramatic stuff.
Yeah, dramatic. And it's I was probably being a little bit dramatic, but then again, at the same time, it was just a little bit. And a lot of intuitives I've seen do this, like online, like they just really put themselves into this perpetuating state of being misunderstood and nobody really gets me. And it gets to a point now where they even don't bother to try and allow people to get them. So I think that we're going to jump into that more like once we address the things that you said on your list.
Mm-hmm.
But just before we get into that, do you ever relate to that type of mindset? Like, do you think you were ever in that stage?
I do relate to feeling misunderstood, but I think due to kind of my environment that I grew up in, I never really saw myself as the victim. I saw myself as like, this is going to sound bad, like the problem, because it's not other people's fault that I felt misunderstood, because I felt I couldn't communicate the things that I wanted to in a way where other people could understand.
Interesting.
So I definitely can relate to the whole being misunderstood thing, but I personally just haven't really seen myself as the victim. So that's one thing that I really try to work on, is to make sure that people understand what's actually going on inside my mind.
I like
and sometimes it's hard, because sometimes I don't always know the words to tell it in a way where everybody could understand.
Got you. So as an INFJ, do you see, do you always, sounds weird, but do you always pretty much know what's in your mind and the only problem is articulating it, or sometimes you don't even know what's going on in your mind?
I think more times than not, I haven't completely figured it out. There are times where I know what I want to say, but maybe it's either how I say it, or if I think that this person is not going to understand it in the way I'm about to say it, trying to find another way to communicate it has tended to be my problem. Because sometimes I just think in pictures or movie scenes or stuff like that. It's not always words. So there's a lot of like interconnected web stuff in my mind that doesn't make sense, but it's okay. I think that's tends to be my problem more, is that if I haven't put it all together in my mind, when I try to explain it to other people, when I'm not sure, it just doesn't work.
Got you. That makes sense. As an ENFJ, I also think in the same, we share the same perceiving function, main perceiving function, and the main judging function. In my NFJ Venn diagram video, I talk about like the differences between ENFJs and INFJs and the similarities between them as well. And essentially what helps JeSani as an INFJ to articulate these NI insights is pretty much FE. She has healthy FE where she actually helps a lot. She's in my inner circle, and she assists me a lot. No, I'm happy to be a part of your inner circle. She helps a lot with, getting people's needs met and everything. And you can tell that she's an FE user, which is like pretty much like why it's like, you're not unhealthy. But to be a developed FE user, to be a developed INFJ, would be an INFJ who is able to more easily articulate what they're what they're thinking in their mind. And then for me as an ENFJ, I've always been able to articulate things with ease.
Absolutely.
But then comes kind of like the substance. One quick example that I usually would give is I would compare Jamila, who's an ISFP, to Tay, who's an ESFP. Tay, as you guys have seen on my channel, he is ESFP, leads with extroverted sensing. That's his dominant function. So
and my last.
Yeah, and your last, which we'll talk about. But pretty much he's been a great performer his whole entire life.
Absolutely.
Like if you talk to him, he's just always been really, really good with SE related things. But then comes the substance that he needs to put into it. So like sometimes like me and him would have conversations, and he would say like, "Oh, Denzel, like I think I talk about myself too much," and things along those lines. And I'm gonna just stop talking about myself. And I tell him like, "Dude, it's all right to talk about yourself, just as long as what you're saying about yourself actually has substance."
Right.
Like your story is telling other people. That's what a lot of great musicians do. And so you have to make sure that you spend enough time with yourself to dig into that treasure, so that when you do talk about yourself, when you put yourself into your music, into your art, then all of a sudden like people will really feel it when you go up on stage. Now Jamila, on the other hand, she leads with FI, introverted feeling, which is Tay's second function. So she already has all of that substance, but she would have to learn how to bring it out in the same way that Tay does when he's performing. So in the same sense, when it comes, and that's how it pretty much goes with like E versus I relationships. So with ENFJs, they're often very good at articulating what they, have to say and all of that, blah, blah, blah. And like I said, our main mode of perception is an I. So there's no ENFJ who's completely ignoring their introverted intuition. That's their main way of perceiving the world. However, they may not be perceiving the world enough. They may not be spending enough time with it to have the substance needed to put meaning behind whatever they're going to say. Now, people like JeSani, INFJs, they do the reverse, where it's like they spend so much time gathering that substance and everything, but then they're so slow into action due to inferior SE they don't even like to really communicate, or they find an inability to be able to communicate what's going on in their head.
Right.
So then you have to find an ENFJ who can help you to further articulate the things that are in your mind, because we just naturally understand each other. Once again, that Professor Xavier Jean Grey connection. But then the ENFJ also learns, just like how I did with David and a lot of podcasts and stuff that I've just drove myself into within the past 3.5 years or so of development. The ENFJ starts to learn how to spend more time with their insights and develop that as well. So it's kind of like a iron sharpens iron type of thing.
Ah, that's biblical.
Yeah,
that's
biblical. Is biblical, and we are Bible believing Christians.
I just want to add, you actually touched on it, so that was good. I was gonna say one tip for INFJs: if you want to become more healthy or more developed, one thing you can do is to study ENFJs. And I heard that from personality hackers. So
Yeah.
but he just said all of that. So.
Yeah. Essentially, that's pretty much it. And then for ENFJs, you study INFJs, because they will really teach you how to use your weaker functions of NI and TI. Well, NI is not your weaker function, but TI is their tertiary, and it's our inferior function. Then for them, we teach them how to use SE, like hop into action, even with style, stuff like that.
For me, it's been really good to have friends like Denzel, Jamila,
I
Bethany.
love you, girl.
Okay. Just my friend group, just because I trust them enough to kind of help me kind of process everything that goes on in my head. So like when I have a problem or I have an issue and I'm not really sure how I feel about it, I just kind of tend to talk in circles, and they kind of just help me make it a straight path. Number 1 on the list was they chronically put other people's needs ahead of their own. That's me to the T. Sometimes it's good. I mean, because of course I don't want to be a selfish person, but I tend to go to the extreme, which is kind of my problem in life in general. I don't really know how to, I'm learning how to create a balance between. And so either I would not do anything for anybody, or I would do everything for everybody. And so like learning boundaries between like, okay, yes, you need me to help you, but let me finish this first and then I'll come help you. Because I'm the type of person, I will cancel all of my plans to just and drop everything to help people, which like I said, it's a good thing, but like learning that balance, it can definitely if you don't have that balance, it can tire you out and you can be stressed out because then you don't have your work done. And so just don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay? They make excuses for other people's toxic behavior. No shade. But just a prime example with the last person that I dated, he was not the he was a great person, but there was a lot of unhealthy just stuff in our relationship. And for a long time, I tried to make excuses for it. Like literally the example says, oh, he was raised in a broken family, which in this case he was. Or he doesn't know better, that type of thing. And I literally said those things, and I stayed in that relationship longer than I should have because I was trying to give him a chance, or just making excuses for the things that he was doing, and it wasn't necessary. So that's definitely something that I have overcome. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. The next thing, this is probably, it should have been number 1 in my opinion, but it wasn't. It's okay. It's number 3. They must do everything perfect. I am a perfectionist, and it's so annoying because, at least for me, because I strive so hard to do my best, and like everything must be perfect, I caused a lot of unnecessary stress, unnecessary pressure to, not that you shouldn't be your best, but like if it's not to the T, then I failed, and that's not really how life works. It's important to try your best, and it's important to have standards for yourself, but don't set unrealistic expectation on yourself, because it causes you just a lot of just agony. We just want the Saints to be happy, let's not be stressed out. They have weak boundaries, which I kind of touched on earlier, but it's very easy for me to like let people take advantage of me, because I'm not really a confrontational person. I don't like conflict. I don't like feeling uncomfortable, and it's just a lot. And so I avoid it at all costs. So if that means, for me, if that just means letting somebody just continually use me, well, then that's just what's going to happen. And I'm trying to get out of that. I'm trying to practice like expressing my emotions with the smaller stuff and gradually get better. Which kind of leads into the next one. They're afraid of saying no. Because I really want to avoid conflict at all costs. So if me saying no may cause the other person either to get mad at me or not like me or any of that other stuff, we just avoid it. And so that's not good, because first of all, if they're really your friends, if you tell them no, they're not going to go anywhere. And if they do, well, then you need to check your friends and probably get rid of them. The next one I couldn't relate to as much. Not that I haven't struggled with it. Well, actually, I haven't struggled much with this one. But anyway, it's number 7. It says they become so involved with other people's problems that they can't focus on their own. And it's not that I don't focus on my own problems. It's just that I just tend to care about other people's problems more than my own. It's not that I don't think about them. It's just they're not at the forefront. And so I'm working on the balance with that too. I'm the type of person that I like think about my problems and think about how I need to fix them. And then it's like, okay, well, next. We kind of sorted that out. What's up with you type of thing. How can I help you? So, like I said, that we're just learning the balance, but it hasn't been like a major problem in my life. They rarely let anyone in. That should have been number 2 on my list because that's actually something that I've talked to Denzel and Jamila and Bethany and the rest of the saints about because that was something that I was really trying hard to break free from this particular semester. Because of a lot of hurtful things in my past with relationships, not just like boyfriends, but just like friendships, I kind of did the INFJ door slam, which I don't know if we've talked about or not. But and so I just
actually haven't on my channel much. But yeah, if you want, you can go ahead. Yeah, continue.
So basically, the INFJ door slam is basically like, okay, you've hurt me, so we're emotionally disconnected. Probably physically disconnected. All the leaves that you want to add is disconnected. Because I don't know if it's just a people thing or particularly an INFJ thing. When we feel rejected, we feel hurt. Like it's so deep that like one person can make you not trust anybody for the rest of your life. Even people who don't even deserve that. Like, for instance, my siblings. Like if somebody who, like a friend, did me wrong, then I would just question everybody. And there are a lot of people in my life who don't deserve to be questioned just based off this one person. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what the INFJ door slam is kind of.
Yeah,
you could
it's
probably
essentially
explain it
like being just INFJs, especially because they have FE and TI like right next to each other. Then it's almost as if like they can just have that quick switch between, oh, I care about you, to just all of a sudden just cut off. And usually from what I hear, it's when things have just been like they've just gotten so fed up with everything that's been going on, and you just push them to that limit, and they don't even announce to you that they're cutting you off. It's and that's kind of like why it's like the door slam, because nobody really tells anyone like, hey, I'm about to slam the door on you.
Right.
It's just boom, and then it's all of a sudden like, oh wait, there's been a shift in the atmosphere. The vibes are not the same anymore, or I just clearly have not seen you anymore. And this isn't limited to the INFJ, of course, but it's popular for the INFJ. It's the most, not necessarily common, but the most surprising, since somebody who could be so supportive could all of a sudden ghost just as easily. And that's kind of like why it's like that big of a deal for them. But yeah, that's essentially what it is.
Which can cause problems in relationships with people who don't understand just how you're wired. Because even in my own life, with my own relationships, sometimes it's very intentional for me to go MIA. I was just thinking about this the other day, and other times it just all of a sudden I wake up like, oh snap, I haven't talked to my friends in like 3 weeks. Oh my. Like sometimes it is. Sometimes it's like, okay, I'm tired of being around people. So I'm gonna just take a month and just be in my dorm. And then other times it's like you either just become really focused, like this. For example, I haven't seen Denzel and Jamila in like a whole week because I've been in my dorm cleaning, getting ready for exams, just being in my dorm, just chilling in my dorm, and it's like, oh snap, I probably should make sure they know I'm still alive. That type of thing.
You see you tweet. I'm subscribed to you on Twitter, so every time you tweet, I see it right on my phone.
So that's good.
Get Jean Grey is still alive. Right. Phoenix still lives.
Get you a Jamila and Denzel. I need to work on with the whole INFJ door slam thing is letting people know that I've cut them off. Because you're not gonna know. Either I'm not gonna treat you any differently, or you just won't see me or hear from me ever again. I just kind of.
Do you usually feel like they deserve to be cut off, or it's something that can be reconciled?
I think it depends on the person,
for sure,
what they did.
That's true.
Because for me, like he was saying, if you gotten the INFJ door slam, it wasn't just because of one thing. Because I'm not like that. I'm not just going to cut you off the first time you hurt me. Just because I realize that I'm human and other people are human. And
you
so...
make excuses for people, too. So that's kind of the thing.
That's exhibit A. And I understand that people are going to mess up because we're not perfect, because we're human. So there has been a lot of grace distributed up until that point. And so, like he was saying, either I'm like all in or I'm all out. Mm-hmm. And it's not, there is no in between when it comes to that type of thing. But because I don't like conflict, I can still treat a person like with respect. Like, I'm not going to be disrespectful. I'm not going to be rude just because it is not my job to ascribe how much value somebody has. And that's just the way I think. So I can have issues with you, or we cannot be cool, but I'm still going to speak to you. If you need me, like, I'm going to be there, just because, like I said, I'm not going to start disrespecting you or being rude to you, because that's not my place. Like, that's just how I think. But at the same time, oh shoot, I don't know where I was going with that.
That's fine. You got it.
Because I do see the value in people, even if I do have to cut them off, I'm still going to treat them some type of way of the utmost respect, just because it's not my place. That was essentially where I was going with that. This one I also didn't struggle with as much. They feel responsible for everybody's feelings. That's not me.
Yeah, that's more of me.
Yeah, because I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not you, and so therefore I just don't feel responsible. Now, if it's related to me, like, oh, something I said made you feel bad, okay, well then yeah, obviously I feel responsible for that. But if it ain't got nothing to do with me, it's not that I don't care. It's just I don't care.
You're just detached enough, because David is literally the same way. And once again, like, I think that would be, quote unquote, a marker of an unhealthy INFJ, because they're not using enough TI to detach and all of that. Now, for me as an ENFJ, I don't think that would be unhealthy, since I'm an FE dominant, so I work in that arena. But yeah, I usually feel responsible for everybody else's feelings, especially like for the atmosphere and all of that. Like, if
I agree.
If the feeling atmosphere is to be a thermostat, then I'm always going to be the one, like, that people come to pretty much and be like, yo, you're the only one who knows how to pretty much like use that really weird device on the wall. And JeSani as an INFJ, she has a lot of knowledge about how to use the thermostat as well. But being an INFJ with being an FE auxiliary, she'll be slightly, just ever so slightly less capable of doing that, because she doesn't lead with that judging function. Right. So she's not as assertive or as up forth with controlling the emotional atmosphere and being as in tune with it. She just more of like, if it's really like that bad, then she's like, you know what? I know how to use the thermostat on the wall. Let me go and turn this down. Let me go heat this up. Like, okay, if I really gotta go and do this, as opposed to like,
it's just a last resort.
Yeah,
because I don't. It's not that I don't care once again, but most of the time, like, if Denzel is there, I don't feel the need to, because I know he's gonna take care of it. So I'm gonna just sit back and just let you do what you do. They use their personality type as an excuse to unhealthy behaviors. Let me tell y'all something. INFJs, we gotta get it together. I personally have never struggled with this, but I just question people's thought processes. Like, just because we're the rarest type, I mean, does it really make us special? I mean, I realize it does, but it doesn't. And so I just feel like that's disrespectful to think that you're just the greatest person ever because you're 1 in 1,000. Calm down.
As I've said one time,
calm down.
There are rare diseases that kill people. In fact, Hitler was an INFJ.
Oh, okay.
So not every INFJ will be Hitler. Not every INFJ will be Gandhi.
Right.
Rare only means so much. And there are other types that are also rare too. And it's not that big of a deal. We've met horrible INFJs and we've met great INFJs. I personally think that David and JeSani are great INFJs.
Thank you.
And I've met some horrible INFJs, believe it or not. They are out there.
We're
And there's even some horrible ones on on TV.
Absolutely.
Like you'll see it. So yeah. So don't use that rarity thing as an excuse for your unhealthy behavior.
Right. Because why would you want to use that as validation for unhealthiness? That doesn't make sense to me, but we're just going to move on. Lastly, which is something I've definitely struggled with as well, they don't see their emotions as a valid source of data. No, that's not a thing for me. Because in my own personal life, I haven't necessarily mastered all of my emotions and kind of understanding that type of thing. And so what I've noticed in the past, I just think that emotions are not valid just because they're fickle. Like, they can change. They're not constant. And maybe that's a TI thing.
Yes.
But no. How I feel is kind of irrelevant because it can lead to bias. And why? We don't need bias. We have to remain objective as possible. How am I working on that? To be honest, I'm not. I should be. But yeah, that's something I definitely am still struggling with because emotions are just not fact.
Yeah.
And so therefore I don't see the need for them. Even though I realize that I'm still an emotional person and emotions are good, it's just with decision making, no.
And it comes in handy too at times because if you hang out with JeSani enough, there are a lot of times where JeSani will literally say like, "Oh, but it doesn't matter how I feel," and especially as an FE user, that actually holds a lot of truth. We are gauging how we feel about other people. We're gauging how we feel based off of how other people feel about certain situations. And so I gave an example one time, I think on a podcast, I was on the INFJ Personality Show podcast with Bo Miller. And I think, it was a very interesting conversation. And I believe I mentioned JeSani either in that or in my live stream with Susan Storm. But it was one of those where it was her birthday. And she said that like her friends took her out to ice cream. Oh yeah, you can tell the story. You're here.
What happened was, I still get mad. Low key, not really. What happened was for my 20th, I think it was, my 19th birthday. I was here, a freshman, and I didn't really have a lot of friends at that particular moment. So I took my roommate out because we were cool, and her friend because we were cool. And we went to Cold Stone, right? Okay. So I'm thinking, it's my birthday. Let's go get some ice cream. I'm going to pay for it. Because that's what I wanted to do. And so we get there, and Nia, that was her friend's name. She was like, "Oh, I got it." She was going to pay for Kimmy's. I'm just like, that's not the point. The point was for me to take you guys out because I want to say thank you for being my friends. But no.
On her birthday.
On my birthday. But that's what I wanted to do, Denzel.
Yeah.
But Neil was all like, "It's your birthday. Why you doing?" I'm like, Says. I literally got so upset, I almost cried. Because I just did not understand why she would not let me pay for the ice cream on my birthday if that's what I wanted to do.
Do you still not get it?
I still don't get it to this day. Let me tell you why. And maybe it's because I am the oldest. A lot of my life, like one of the things that my parents taught me growing up is that, I can't just make decisions for myself. I have to make decisions for everybody because I can't just make decisions just based on how I feel when I have two younger siblings who I have to look out for. And I think I misunderstood what they were saying because most of the time now, me deciding to look out for everybody is what's going to be what's best for everybody, even if that means it's not what's best for myself. Mm-hmm. And so I have to work on including myself in the everybody.
That's it. That's it.
Which is something I'm still working on. But yeah, I don't know if that really related to the ice cream. But the point is, that's what happened. And I didn't get it because it's my day, therefore I do what I want. And what I wanted to do was pay for the ice cream. But she didn't let me. And so, we're good now.
Yeah.
But I was upset.
So, you being an INFJ and everything, a joke that I used, well, it's not even really a joke because it's serious. I believe Jesus to have been an INFJ. And one thing that I often say about ENFJs versus INFJs is that they complete the same amount of things in their lifetime. But if this is the ENFJ and this is the INFJ, then it's pretty much like this.
Absolutely. You did that with your video with David.
Yes. And that's essentially because the ENFJ allows their intuition to guide them along the journey, while the INFJ tries to get their intuition to load up to as much as they can before they get into action. Inferior SE versus tertiary SE. And simply being extroverted judger versus a dominant perceiving function that the INFJs like lead with. So Jesus, he didn't start his ministry until he was 30 years old. And then within 3 years, because he was crucified at 33,
right.
Within 3 years, that man started his ministry. He flipped the whole world upside down to the point where 2,000 years later, we are still talking about Jesus. People, we still worship him. We still, like all of that.
Absolutely.
And
shout out to you.
Yeah, and it, of course, like from a divine standpoint, it was like he was waiting on God the Father's timing.
Right.
And he was, really just allowing the Holy Spirit to like lead him and all of that. But then from an MBTI standpoint, he was loading up his NI so that by the time he got to 30, he's like, okay, I know exactly what steps to go on. And his intuition was already loaded up to pretty much just like the path was already set before him, as opposed to like with the ENFJ, they're discovering the path as they go along, and their intuition, like literally their gut, is just leading them that way. So all of that to say, what would you say that you pretty much see yourself doing that you may have not really gotten into action yet? Like I know you said that you wanted to be a college professor,
Mm-hmm.
but what will your life ideally look like once you have?
That's a great question. Loading up. Right now, I'm reading a lot of books. So, like right now, I'm taking in like a lot of information, which I'm constantly doing. I have such a passion for learning. It's kind of stupid.
How ironic.
But right. So right now, I feel like I'm kind of taking up all this information, storing it, kind of connected it in my mind. So when I do become a college professor, or even when I write, because I do want to be an author of some books. I'm not really sure content-wise yet, but I do eventually want to come out with my own things. That's kind of where all of this preparation is going to kind of just throw up, just kind of come out. So I'm learning different kinds of skills. Communication, like I said, I am working on.
You're doing well.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're doing great. You're
Thank
doing
you.
great.
I'm learning how to not only communicate my ideas or my thoughts, but also my emotions, and the ones that are more so negative, because ask anybody, I don't have any problem expressing happy emotions, joyful emotions. I'm low-key a very excited person, especially when you get me around like music. Oh my God, especially like old school. We're gonna move on. I get super, super excited. So like that side of emotions, I'm fine, but it's like the negative ones that could cause issues. I'm trying to work on expressing those more, and kind of learning how to communicate those, because eventually when I am a professor, there are going to be times where students are going to be meeting with me and they have issues, or I'll have issues with students, and I don't want to just start learning then, because that's not really professional. So that's one thing, taking up all information, kind of storing it, just making myself as not as smart, I don't want to use smart, but trying to observe and gather information to make me wiser, that I could use in the future. That's kind of what my preparation life looks like right now. So I think hopefully it won't be in vain. So when I do get to be a college professor, then everything I'm learning in this season of my life will kind of translate and actually come into fruition in the next. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I so heavily relate to that, because that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I'm taking in a lot of information. I posted a Facebook status recently where I said that when I'm not teaching, that I'm learning, and when I'm not learning, that I'm teaching.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of things in my life, I do not see it as binary, but that is definitely binary for me. Like I'm always teaching, and when I'm not teaching, as soon as that switch goes off, it automatically turns on the learning switch. And so right now, even like I'm switching it on and off. Is I'm literally learning from JeSani in this moment as we're recording, and then I'll go ahead and like now I'm in like teach mode and stuff like that. But yeah, in taking information, even stuff like, especially as intuitives, reading books, great, but people they doubt how much Netflix and movies and stuff like that can really be insightful.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, there's so many, you guys see it on my channel all the time. There's so much deep stuff that you can get from movies such as like Black Panther, which I talked about, and you weren't able to see Infinity War with us, which is so sad. Yeah, you can just learn so much from not only books but like Netflix shows and movies and all of that. So I'm really proud of you for like being able to intake all that information. Then as an intuitive, you will naturally get these grand insights, especially as an NI user. You will have your own original insights where you can now put them out as life advice. And as a college professor, you will say things that like in a certain way, you will reintroduce principles in ways that people would just be mind blown about. And the more content that you have for your NI to be able to connect all of these things to, the more analogies you'll now have at your disposal, the more metaphors you'll be able to now have at your disposal, the more references you'll now be able to have at your disposal.
Absolutely.
But if you don't intake all of that information, if you don't watch a lot of movies, if you don't watch a lot of shows, if you don't read a lot of books, if you don't engage with a lot of different people, you will not be able to have your mindset. You will not be able to have those connections in your mind to be able to even further communicate the things that you want to communicate. And so, yeah, that's very essential as a teacher, and I'm glad that you're doing that.
When it comes down to student-teacher relationships, I definitely think it's 50-50. Like, yes, students have to put in the work, but I also think teachers need to learn how to teach. So that's one thing that I want to do, especially going back to using all these examples, finding out all this information so I can relate it. I want my students to be able to learn. I mean, that's why they're there.
Yes.
So I will do what I have to do as a teacher to make sure I can explain content in a way they understand. So therefore, when they take the test, when they go to study, it makes sense, because ultimately I want them to be able to remember the information and apply it to life, not just get 100 on tests, even though that's great, because grades are really important to me. So I get that part, but like, what's the point of learning if you can't really apply it?
Yes.
So that's all I was going to add.
Yeah, that's really good too, because I had an ESFJ teacher, not to like really bash you ESFJs, but she literally, like, people in our classes, everybody would fail tests, and she's like, oh, well, you guys just didn't study hard enough. And it's like, she's like, well, now you guys will know how to better study for the next test. And we would all complain. Like, we had like pre-med majors in there who would be like, yo, I don't fail tests, and I failed yours, and everybody else failed it. How do you not see yourself as the problem? And it just didn't make sense to me, because and I read it on personalityjunkie.com, I believe, or personalityjunkie.com, where me as an ENFJ, we see our students as a reflection of ourselves. And I think that maybe you as an INFJ, you relate to that as well, where it's like, if my student isn't excelling, isn't doing well, I think that that's my fault.
Absolutely.
So when
and my
my
mom
teacher,
is like that too.
Yeah,
My
and
mom's like that too.
if so, I couldn't see how my teacher was just like blaming it on us. Now, of course, maybe there will probably be like places, like things where it's like, oh, the person just wasn't interested, you know, stuff like that.
Right.
But I
so
always
want
to make sure.
To slack. That's not what I'm
Yeah.
It's not what I'm saying.
We just want to make sure that we're doing our 100% best to present the information properly. So yeah, that's definitely a big thing. The last thing that we're just going to address is actually a sermon by T.D. Jakes that JeSani and I had listened to. And I'm going to provide all the links to the 12 signs of an unhealthy INFJ in the description, as well as the links to these podcast sermons for you to be able to listen to. It was a 3-part series where he was talking about eagles. He said that he started like doing research on eagles and everything. I believe that it was based off of the a verse in Isaiah 49. Is it 49, 50? I don't know. Oh, Jamila's researching right now, but I know that it's Isaiah,
right.
where he talks about we shall mount up like eagles and soar.
40, 31.
40, verse 31. You guys can look it up.
All right.
And the
Read
notes
your
that I
word.
already had from it were, eagles stir up the nest and then push their eaglets out. After nurturing the eaglets for years, now they appear cruel, but they know what they're doing. T.D. Jakes was referring to God as the mother, father eagle. And he has taken the time to sit on the eggs and allow them to hatch. And now the same eagle that has watched these eaglets from birth and everything and loved them seems cruel when all of a sudden he's like, and pushes them off the nest and they start to fall. However, and I guess that's the second point I wrote, God does this as well. He may push you out the nest by allowing you to not get a certain job or being fired, even or things along those lines, and later things become clear. So God now all of a sudden seems cruel because he metaphorically pushes us out of the nest, pushes us out of our comfort zone, and now we are forced to learn how to fly.
Absolutely.
But without being pushed out of that nest, we will not know that we have these wings. Or we will know that we have the wings, but we don't know how to use them just yet. And I think that the really cool thing is that when eagles are teaching their eaglets how to fly, so yeah, they'll push them off the nest and everything, and they'll be falling. But then if the eaglet, for whatever reason, is unable to pick up and fly before they hit the ground, the mother eagle will swoop down, pick up the eaglet again, and then fly him back up and drop him again until they finally get it right. So you're still being watched and
Absolutely.
you're still being
Shout out to
protected.
God.
Yeah, but God's not going to cut you slack, especially if he loves you, because he knows that you can do it.
Absolutely.
And he's going to keep on pushing you, literally, until you're able to see the potential that you have within you, like to fly. If these eaglets stayed in the nest their whole entire life, they would never be able to use their wings as powerfully. They would not know what these wings are for. In the same way that us as people, if we are not pushed out of our comfort zones, if we do not take those risks and allow God to push us into uncomfortable areas, then we will not know what really lays within us, which is what I was talking about, that inner phoenix.
Absolutely.
And the last thing that I was also going to mention from the sermon, which is pretty much how T.D. Jakes finished it, was he said that oftentimes, by the way, T.D. Jakes is INFJ, shout out to him. This was so insightful to me. But he said that he will be in his office and he'll be like working, and he just tries to have like his alone time, his quiet time, and his kids will like run up to the office and try to like disrupt every now and then and like bother him. So whenever they would do that, then he would like hide around the corner, and then as they're running, then he'll like jump out like boo, and then they'll run off, and like they'll take flight, like they'll just jet off, and then all of a sudden they'll come back up and they start saying, "Daddy, scare me again, scare me again." And he repeated that. It's one of those things you have to listen to it. He probably tells the story better. They were saying, "Daddy, scare me again," in a way like, how would you articulate that part? Like, I'm trying to find the words to say it, and it's funny, I'm asking the INFJ to do it. But
Basically, what he was just talking about in that particular section is how we're most alive when we're like scared because our senses are more alert. And so that's kind of where he was going with that. That's all I remember.
Yeah. And he didn't necessarily say this. This is where my NI insight is just filling in holes. But I would guess that they probably didn't even know that they could run that fast.
Right. But
until they were like frightened like that. And it's like, whoa, all of a sudden I tapped into this power. Wait a minute, scare me again, so that I can tap into that power and everything. And be able to rehash that adrenaline rush in a way.
That's what it was.
And so when God allows you to have that adrenaline rush, then all of a sudden you figure out what you're made of. In X-Men Apocalypse, it wasn't until it was that heat of the moment, and sorry to spoil it for you guys. I mean, you guys should still go ahead and watch it. There's still a lot that you can go see from it, but it wasn't until like the exact like heat of the moment when Jean Grey was like, "Oh my goodness, you know what?" And she allowed the Phoenix to just come out. And
destroyed everything.
it was set from there.
One of the things that kind of resonated with me the most, because it's been a while since I've listened to the sermon, was the part when he was talking about how he has a lot of like loyal followers now because when he first started, nobody knew who he was. He moved out to a city where he didn't have anybody. He had like maybe 2 or 3 people follow him or whatever. It might have been 12 actually. And he was complaining at first because it was like, oh, when am I going to have like the 20 cars following me to go preach somewhere else, or when am I going to have like people telling me like how I influenced them and all this other stuff. And he used the analogy of like when an eagle has babies or eaglets or whatever you call them, he has to sit on them for a while. And so now his ministry, as you guys know, TD Jakes, is blown up. A lot of the loyal people that he has now are people that he took time to invest in and mentored. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of stood out to me just because I've been the mentor and the mentee. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool. Another analogy he used when the mother eagle like teaches them how to fly, they kind of crawl or walk up on her back or her wings, and like she'll go out into the sky, yada yada yada. And so that particular portion, he was just reminding us that like a lot of your success, a lot of lessons that you learn are on the backs of other people, or other people's progress, or other people's just legacies. And just to remind us that it's important to be appreciative of those, because you would not be where you are. You would have never learned how to fly had you not gotten on somebody else's back.
To summarize everything together, if you are an intuitive, and especially an INFJ, avoid victimizing yourself.
Please do. That's annoying.
Yeah, it's incredibly annoying.
From an INFJ to other fellow INFJs, it's annoying.
Yes. If you feel like you're a victim in this world and you're misunderstood and all of that, well, take ownership. Discover what you have within you, and then pretty much force yourself into society. I like what Antonia Dodge actually said. I think I wrote it down. Society won't make space for you unless you make society make space for you. Tell society you're not going anywhere, which will force society to accept you when they see that what you're made of. So that's ironically also like what the mutants and X-Men did, because they pretty much told the world like, hey, look, y'all human beings, y'all are not really accepting us as mutants, but we're not going anywhere. We are going to develop our powers to the best of our ability, and we are going to help the world to a point where it's like, wow. And even with Superman, like if you watch the Man of Steel and everything, then they were afraid of Superman. They didn't really trust him, but he wasn't going anywhere. And he stayed strong to who he was. And finally, after he showed just how strong he was, Hercules also comes to mind. Then, like all of these great heroes, like when they did seem misunderstood and misplaced, and that doesn't make them special or superior, by the way. So intuitives, you're not special or superior. There's just less of us, so it's harder for us to fit in, and we're known as the weird ones. But that doesn't mean that you should just all of a sudden create your own little world and like stay over
Come
there.
on, recluse, don't do that.
Yeah, find a way to integrate yourself into society and be so helpful to society by developing your powers, by tapping into your inner potential, that people will now be like, whoa, I'm so sorry that we even tried to ostracize you to begin with. But until you're able to do that, I do not consider you personally as a developed intuitive. A developed intuitive no longer sees themselves as a victim to society or ostracized from society, or they may still see themselves as misunderstood, but they won't see that as too big of a problem for them to not make an impact on the society that they're misunderstood by.
Because you're great, and we need a lot of greatness in the world. So just be great.
Yeah, I think that's about it, unless if you have any final words.
No, I would just say, I said no, and then proceeded to talk. I saw this quote on Facebook. I'm not sure who said it, but it said, when God wants to stretch us or wants us to grow, then he'll often make us uncomfortable. So just be encouraged if you're a believer. And even, I feel like that also relates if you're not a believer. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, you can grow in a lot of uncomfortable situations. Mm-hmm. So kind of embrace the uncomfortableness. I know it's not a word, but it's okay.
I use that word all the time.
So embrace it, because there's oftentimes a really great lesson. You'll discover something about yourself that maybe you didn't know before. So just embrace The lack of control, because most of the time that's what it is. Embrace it, because all things literally will work together for your good. And
Romans 8:28.
And the whole purpose is to be better than we were yesterday. So just take life, not as it is, but just learn from life.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys, for watching this. And thanks, JeSani, for being on my channel.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored.
Yeah, guys, she's single, by the way.
Okay. All right. Let him. That's all right.
I'm just kidding. But you have to get through me.
Right, and you gotta just come correct, because that's a whole other video. But it's
we have to make sure that you are solid enough material.
Absolutely.
Because she is indeed a gem.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, thanks again for watching, guys, and done.